Welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. Once again, we have someone from the comic book industry. What a crazy world this is. No, I have today J. Martin, acclaimed music video director and storyboard artist from Hollywood, who also has written a original graphic novel over at Dark Horse called Lost Boy. He had written 1996 to 1998. He had a nationally syndicated comic strip called Tommy. He's a storyboard artist for movies such as The Amazing Spider-Man #2, Constantine, I Am Legend, Ad Astra, The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and more. Martin is also an award-winning music video director, as I mentioned before, directing music videos for artists such as Plain White T's, Nas, Shawn Mendes, Christina Perri, Daughtry, Kid Rock, Atreyu, Census Fail, Dashboard Professional, Taking Back Sunday, Death Cab for Cutie, and more. He's also wrote and directed his own feature film entitled 7 Minutes, which came out in 2014 and is available online as well. We talked Lost Boy in his upcoming book, Yellow, from Dark Horse Comics, over here on episode number 127 of the Capes and Tights podcast. Before you listen, though, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky, as well as rate, review, subscribe, all those things over at Spotify and Apple, all your major podcasting platforms. This is J. Martin, illustrator and writer of Lost Boy at Dark Horse Comics. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. How are you this morning, Jay?
I'm great, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. We're excited. I mean, I will say right off the bat, I am in love with Lost Boy. It's a great book. I am so happy to talk to you today. So we'll just get rolling into it and cool, chat some comics, some graphic novel, some original graphic novel. For anybody who's going to, see it, this is Lost Boy out at Dark Horse Comics, Dark Horse Books, whatever. Dark Horse. We're just going to say Dark Horse because that makes it simple. But yeah, I mean, before we get started into talking about Lost Boy, really, let's just know a little bit about you, Jay. So you had a comic strip, Tommy, that was nationally syndicated, right? Am I correct about that?
That is completely correct. That was probably, that was like in 1997, 98, maybe. It's back
a little while ago.
That was
but not too long ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, that I did that, right when I got out of college. So it was like, it was really exciting. Yeah, it was really like the wrong time for me to be in comics, I think. And I think I was like ready for it. So I'm going back to my roots.
Exactly. But you had this gap. So obviously you did the comic strip. Your dad was a cartoonist as well. Is that correct?
Still is. He still does his comics. He does like 3 comic strips. He does Mr. Boffo, Willie and Ethel, and Cats with Hands. And he basically just keeps drawing them. He can't stop.
Can't stop.
Can't stop.
He must have been doing it for a number of years then now, huh?
I mean, he's been doing it since I was, I don't know. I mean, I think I was like probably maybe 10 years old when he got syndicated with his first comic strip. And then, amazing. Yeah, so he's been doing it for, it's been his whole career.
That's awesome. That's so cool. So did comics to you, comic strips really what get you into the medium of reading, paneled stories and things like this in the first place, obviously with your dad being a cartoonist and so on, or did you actually read X-Men and different comic books itself too?
Oh, I think it was, so what happened was my father was really focused on being a cartoonist, and he couldn't work or do anything if there was a television set in the house. So when I grew up, there was no TV. And my brothers, I have 4 older brothers who are around 6 and 10 years older than me. And they were comic book collectors. And so there was just tons of comic books around the house, like bags of old Conan, Avengers, like tons of comics. So I was just like, I would just sit and read comic books, and then I would try to draw the comic book characters. And then my dad had like his office where he was doing these newspaper comics. So I was seeing like the process, like the penciling, the inking, the zipatone, the whole like, how we do the lines and the lettering. It was like growing up in like a comic workshop and no distractions because there's no
Yes,
TV.
yes. And so that got you into it in the first place, and seeing that. But you then took a deviation, really, because I mean, you went into directing and storyboard art and stuff like that instead of doing comics right off the bat. I mean, is this your first? I don't know much about you other than the small things that I've seen. Is this your first like published book like this
Yeah,
out
I've
there?
never done anything like that. I never even like, I'd always wanted to, like, it was sort of in the back of my head, like, if I ever get a chance, I want to like, because as I get older, I like got really into like reading graphic
Mm-hmm.
novels and like appreciating the art form. And, that was especially, yeah, it became like a thing, like go to a comic book shop. And I really like that sort of OGN, like uh, very interested in that
Mm-hmm.
creatively, but I never felt like I had like the time because I'd be either shooting or trying to pitch on a shoot or developing something, and I was just in that other world. And I think I didn't even realize it until not even with Lost Boy, but I think with this new project, comics take time. It's like a very time consuming exercise. It's not like um it's a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like the drawing, even like the writing it and everything is just like, yeah, I don't, yeah. I mean, like I get up at like 5 o'clock every morning to like write and draw these comics to like get them out.
It's funny too because I mean there are you give I'm guessing you have a special appreciation for those people who have an artist or a writer. There's a team because you do in this you have Frank and yourself that, and then obviously you have an editing team over at Dark Horse and things like that. But like it's you're doing all the lines, you're doing all that stuff, you're coloring it. It's a lot of work. You mentioned that, and so people have a special appreciation who have other people to do the work for you. You're doing everything, so it is even more work than some other people get to do.
It is, it is, it's fun work. Like I really enjoy it, but it does just takes time. Like you can't get around like
Mm-hmm.
the amount of time it takes to like draw a page of comics. It's just, it is what it is. So you're at the desk a lot more.
Yes.
Like doing music videos, it was a thing where you'd work, like probably the best year I ever had doing that is you'd have a shoot basically every month or so,
Mm-hmm.
and the prep would be a week, and then you'd have a you'd shoot for a couple days, and then you'd edit for a week or two. Maybe there's visual effects, but it was like there was time. Now
Yes.
it's like it's like there's like no time. Like I'm out of time. Just like getting up and like I don't know. It's a lot. I mean, it's funny to think about. Like,
I mean,
but
is it? Do you like just like the torture of writing and drawing comics? I mean, because you just mentioned how I didn't say easy, but like it's different doing directing music videos and things like that. But then you did your Tommy comic strip, and then you went on and you did music video. How did you get into directing music videos? Like, how did that come about?
so I always like I had this like I always wanted to like direct music videos. I was so not having a TV. This all goes back to not having a TV. My friends, when I was in high school, would make me. They would put those tapes in, like a VHS tape in, and they'd record MTV for like 3 hours or whatever the length of those tapes were, and they'd bring me the tapes. It's like here you can watch videos and you can have some culture. Like I was like one of those.
That's
So they
amazing.
would they'd bring me, it'd have like, the In Excess video and all the whatever the cool videos were, but like hours of it on a tape. And I had a VCR and I hooked it up to my computer monitor. So that was sort of my entertainment system. But I would watch videos, just hours of these videos. And I was kind of obsessed with the art form. And I had done the comics and I think I was like at a time in my life where I felt like my father was a cartoonist and I wanted to do something different.
Mhm.
Like it was like, didn't feel right. And so I was like, let me try something else, and I went to graduate school at Pratt in New York. And I was there, and I was studying painting, and I went to this art exhibition, and it was storyboards. It was all these storyboards from movies, and I can't remember what movie in particular, but it was but I saw the artwork, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I do. Like it kind of looked like comic book art, black and white. And I immediately was like, started like researching it, and basically decided very quickly that I would just pack up my stuff and move to LA to try to become a storyboard artist. And I I did that. It was funny because I found this agency that represented storyboard artists in LA. And I was like, oh, I saw their website, and they would, they had people who did all these movies, and I was like, oh, I could just do that. And so I like made a portfolio, and I drove out there, and I like literally went to the place, showed up, and I was like, hi, here's my portfolio. And I was like, this is going to be no problem. And they looked at it, and they were like, yeah, you can draw comics, but like you don't know anything about movies or film. And like this is like great. And I was like, so it's not gonna happen right away. And they're like, yeah, nah, you got a ways to go. And so I just like I just started scrambling, and I tried to like this is a very I had a fortunate occurrence. I was just trying to like be out and meet people and try to meet someone who could try to help me out with this. And I was at a party, and I met this guy named Mark Bristol, and he had just storyboarded The Thin Red Line for Terrence Malick.
Mm.
And we're at this party, and he's like, you really want to be a storyboard artist? And I was like, I do. And he's like, if you're serious about it, come over to my house at 10 a.m. and I'll like show you the ropes. And so I did, and he like spent the day with me and basically just like showed me what he did, showed me the process, taught me like about like film language. He showed me some books that would like sort of film school books that would help me figure it out, and kind of set me on the right course. And so then I started doing like student films and trying to get like a real portfolio. And then I went back to that agency, and they were like, okay, we'll represent you. And then I started working as storyboard artist.
That's just, yeah, it's one of those, these are the small jobs that I think that even the most rudimentary people who watch films don't understand that they're there, including to the point where if I told someone, I was like, yeah, Jay Martin was on there. And to me, some of your credits, like, hey, they're Delilah. It was like my high school years. And so it's honestly, if I'm right, I saw that you directed Senses Fail music videos and Atreyu. And those are bands that literally I saw most of those bands live in concert. And it was like it's my like wheelhouse. So seeing that was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But if I explained to them that you directed a music video for that, the little comments will be, wait, there's directors for music video? Because it's not the, I mean, just be honest, people out there, there's directors for pornography videos. There's directors for anything that's on screen like this. So like, you may not think it because it may not be the primary, the music is the primary spot of what they're trying to promote. But there is people who have to put these things together. There's a whole team of people who have to do this. And then to the other point where that is the storyboard artist. There is storyboard art for the majority of major motion pictures that are out there that get people the idea of what's going on. And does being behind the scenes of like music videos and being behind the scenes of storyboard artists help you in making Lost Boy? Like, has this been a journey that's helped you become a better comic book artist and comic book cartoonist?
Oh yeah, I don't think I could have made Lost Boy without like spending a lot of time studying film. I mean, it was really helpful for making the book and for like making comics in general, because it's visual storytelling. And when you storyboard a movie, you're essentially making a comic book of what the movie will be. And you're limited by the aspect ratio of the frame, whereas in a comic book you're not, and you're able to like, but it's very similar. Like making Lost Boy and storyboarding a movie is like, I mean, the only difference is when making Lost Boy, you can spend some time on the frames and make them really pretty. Whereas when you're making a movie, they're like, give me all the frames now. Like, I want the scene at the end of the day, like quick. We'll do like on those movies like I'm Legend
Yeah.
or Constantine. Well, not Constantine, that was a little different, but like a lot of these movies, you'll do like so many versions of a scene. Like you'll do, it'll be this version and that version, and like it's you get very like you're not precious with anything you do in that world. Like you'll draw like 100 drawings and they'll all end up in the trash, and then you'll do it again the next day and the next day, and it's very much like doing storyboards is almost like a service. Like your service is like you're working with the director to show them like what they're thinking or give them a version of a scene, and then they're looking at it and being like, either that's the way we're going to do it, or wow, good thing we didn't do that. It's terrible. Or so it's like it's more like, I don't think people realize it's a process that's like more than the end result. Like storyboards are nice, but
do you get to keep a lot of those, like personally, or do you you mentioned in the trash, but like, is there any, do you have like ones from the movies you've worked on personally?
I think technically they're like the property of the studio, so you'd have to like leave everything at Warner Brothers or wherever you were.
So what you're trying to say, Jay, is that you don't have any legally. You don't.
I have some from like these new movies. I do, because it's different. Like once the internet and everything came out, and I was like super late to go to like the tablet. Like now I draw everything on the tablet, but I was like so late to that. Like I was doing pencil and paper like way later. I remember doing a job where I was like I was in a bullpen with like 4 other storyboard artists working on this movie, and I was the only person doing pen and paper. And I realized how annoying it was, because I was at this production company, and I would like, everyone else was doing everything on their tablets, and I had to like go into the office, and I would like scan everything on like the computer. Like I'd have like a stack of drawings. I'd go in the office, and I think I was like driving everyone insane, because it was like, they're like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, why does he come in the office? Why does he keep like, he's in like a copy room all day? And that's what I was used to, because I was just like, I don't know.
Someone just hands you a stack of papers and like, hey, copy boy, can you please copy? No, I don't. That's not what I do for a living.
Yeah, I'm not the copy boy. I'm drawing this stuff.
It's funny how you mentioned the tablet thing, because I use a lot of tablet as my day job as a creative director for a brewery, and I do a lot of our marketing, our beer can labels and things like that. And we just did one for the local, I say local, but the regional theater. We have a professional theater here, and their 50th,
right?
Yeah, their 50th season at the Penobscot Theater Company is this year. And so they just kicked their season off, and they wanted to do a collaboration beer at the brewery I worked for in honor and releasing it. They also, for their 50th season, they have now bought the building next to them and have a bar that is like pre-show, post-show. You can get drinks. You can actually get drinks pre-ordered, so that when you go into the theater, when the intermission happens, all you need to do is go back to the bar, and it's waiting for you at the bar, so that you can drink it a little sips there during intermission and bring it back into the theater with you, which is unbelievable. But I did a can artwork, and they just redid their facade. Like they just did a facade grant, so they have like this new beautiful looking outside of their building, and they're like, this is what we think the can should look like. So I illustrated the entire outside of the building, and I did it all digitally. And it wasn't until like I was at the theater over the weekend for their opening night that I realized I should have done it on pencil and paper, because I could have then maybe auctioned off the original art as a fundraiser for them. For the theater. But now I'm like, the original art, I was like, here's the iPad that I drew it on.
Yeah, I mean,
like there's no original art anymore. I mean, I could just print it, and technically if I print it once, that's the original art, because but like it's not the same. So I wish I would have done it that way. But
so you talk to a lot of like comic people. What do you do? Like, what do people do that do all their stuff digitally for their original art? Do they just
Nothing.
go?
So what's happening, I think, more. I talked last 2 weeks ago's episode was with Liana Kangas, who
I saw that.
they're a comic book artist, and they're wonderful. But they are starting to do more pencil and paper because the value of that original artwork. And sometimes it's like we'll do pencil and paper for covers because that's what people want. Like, for you, the original artwork for the front of the cover of Lost Boy is the one that people are going to recognize and see. And so maybe that if someone's a huge Lost Boy fan, they want that original piece of artwork. More like your third panel inside the page. It's an original artwork, but maybe it's not as recognizable to a lot of people as the cover is. So like Liana's doing a lot more like covers, pencil and paper, and then interior work, they might switch to an iPad or some sort of tablet so that it doesn't really matter. Also, these people who are with comic book like art vendors, they're going to want original art. So a lot of people are going back. Some people like sketch on an iPad to make sure they get what they want and then do the original later on stuff on pencil and paper so that they can have some sort of original piece of artwork. It's a mixture of people. I think it depends on what you want to do with that artwork afterwards.
I mean, I like that idea of selling it. That seems like a good lucrative. Like I think those guys like that do it the old school way. I think they're doing well.
Well, that's the thing is conventions. A lot of the fact that like, this is your project, obviously, and other people who are working for the big two. So someone does a cover for like an X-Men book. And you go to a convention and you can sell that original artwork. It's probably going to make more money off of that original piece of artwork than you are that you got paid to actually do the book, because daily or page rates and cover rates aren't what they should be. And so a lot of people keep that original piece of artwork so that they can then sell their original artwork later on and not have to draw another thing. Plus they could probably make, depending on the artist, upwards to a couple $1,000s, which is probably more than what they got paid to do the book in the first place. So I think it's a mixture of whatever. Personally, I'm not good enough to do an illustration on a piece of paper once and be like, this is good. I had to redraw that so many times that if I didn't do it on an iPad, it probably would have taken me way longer. And I was on such a time crunch that I couldn't have done that.
It is so much faster on the tablet because that like Command Z. You're like, okay, no.
Or like where you want someone on a page, like if you have, your deer in Lost Boy in a certain spot, but you want to move it. If it's on a tablet, you can put it on a different layer and move that deer around a little bit. Like all that stuff is something that you can't really do easily and quickly. You can on a piece of paper, but like it's just not. I think you're gonna get better final product in my opinion if you use it as tablet, because you're gonna get what you want on the page, not what you are time crunched or what you're, oh, I don't want to redo that again. That's what you're gonna get. That's why I think tablet sometimes is better end product because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it took me so long to switch over, especially with the storyboarding, because everything's getting scanned in and sent down the line to like previs or whatever the next department is.
Yeah.
So when you just draw it, obviously it's already in the computer.
Yes, it's already done for you. I literally export it. And then if they need a change, and it's on physical paper, you need to erase something and change it, then you have to do that and then go back to the copier, scan it in again, and send it. This is like quick change, send the PDF off again to your editor or whoever, and they're like, sounds good, that looks good, much better, and you can move on. It just takes less time. But yeah, and then also the software is just so much better nowadays. I mean, I can't imagine me trying to draw on the original tablets compared to what they are like now. Like the fact that someone can just go to a store and buy an iPad and download some software and at least do something. It might not be the best software out there, but there's something for them to draw on, which is pretty cool. I can just picture my son, he's 2. Like the first time he ever draws, it's like on an iPad, not scribbles. Like I could just picture that. Like it's not even on paper. So
new world.
It's crazy. It is a new world.
Yeah, I think there's people that do comics on their iPad, like huge artists. Like I feel like I see that on Instagram. Like it's like on the Procreate, they're doing like whole books,
which is it's just amazing to see. And then you get to coloring digitally is a lot easier. I mean, did you color? I'm guessing was this digitally colored as well?
Yeah, I mean, I did. Yeah. I started it pen and paper with Lost Boy, but then I ended up doing it like 80% of it is all on the computer, and it's all
Nice.
color.
That's
And
awesome.
I always did color on the computer. Like when I did storyboards for
Mm.
movies and stuff, I would scan everything in, and then I would like color it in Photoshop with one of those like Wacom tablets,
Yeah.
not like the one that you doesn't have the
Yes.
screen on it. The early
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 days.
model.
But yeah, so we'll get into Lost Boy here. Let's talk some Lost Boy then. So Lost Boy is the original graphic novel out at Dark Horse that was released in August. You and Frank Svetkovic, did I say that right?
So
We think. But Frank is the letterer of the book, and you did the writing, illustrating, coloring, all the artwork on the book. It's beautiful, beautiful book. That's one of the first things that I saw when I picked it up. The cover is very. I'm a big cover kind of person. Like when someone sees a cover, it draws you in. I wanted this because Dark Horse PR sends out an email every month saying these are the graphic novels that are coming out next month. And so you get that, and I scroll through it, and I hate to say it, I'm not a big Hellboy fan. There's a lot of Hellboy stuff in there, and all that stuff. And then I get to this Lost Boy, and I'm just like, the cover, the name. I was like, I need to read this, and then it wouldn't download for me from
oh
their
no.
email, and I was like, oh god, no. So I finally got it to download, and I read it, and I was amazed by it. And I even my LCS owner, I was like, did you order this? He goes, I didn't even know it existed. And I said, well, that's a problem because you need to. And so then I let him, quote unquote, borrow it. He's an LCS. He has access to this too. He just doesn't have it on the list. Borrow the PDF. And he's like, oh my gosh, I need. So he ordered a couple copies for the shop
Oh,
because of
sweet.
that. So it's now on the shop
I
there
appreciate
too.
that.
Yes.
Thank
So,
you.
but yeah, so it's unbelievable. So you want to give a little like elevator pitch on what Lost Boy is exactly?
I guess it's a unusual survival story about a young boy who's lost in the wilderness, and he needs to find a way out, and it's a surprising way he discovers to make it through.
Mm-hmm. It,
I don't want to give too much away.
exactly.
So,
Well, so my biggest line was being saved is not always what you expect or how you expect it. It was what I feel like. I don't know. There was something that's heartwarming, but sad, touching. There's a little bit of everything in there. And it's technically a young adult graphic novel. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah.
But I always say this when I talk to people about their young adult graphic novels. I'm always like, the misconception someone needs to know about young adult. It means it can be read by young adults and up. That
Right,
doesn't mean because it's
exactly.
for young adults, it means that you can't read it as an adult. A young adult graphic novel, it just means that it's able to be read by young adults. It's not offensive. There's no nudity in it, but you can read it if you're 75 years old, and you'll probably get a different reaction to it, maybe a different feeling about it, but you'll still get to read it. Don't, this is a young
I
adult. I
guess,
don't want to read that.
yeah, it's like appropriate for like I guess 10 years and up. But I think younger than that might be a little scary.
Mm-hmm.
Uh there's some stuff in there that
Yeah.
might be jarring. But I think for like, I don't know. Yeah, like young people can appreciate it, and
Yes.
everyone.
It's kind of like I said, it's kind of like the warning would be that it says for adults only is the same thing that the young adult thing is. It's just telling you that we've looked at it, we reviewed it and said that someone 10 to 17, you're okay to read this, it's fine. Was what I'm getting at it. But yeah, it released in bookstores everywhere because that's the cool thing about graphic novels compared to floppy comics is that the original release of it gets to be like, it was like, I think it was the 23rd at local comic book shops and like the 22nd at bookstores everywhere. So there's that cool thing about everybody gets to bookstores, get it. So pretty much everybody has a local bookstore. There's
Yeah.
not comic book shops are a little harder to find in your depending on where you live, but a local bookstore can get this if they don't have it already. So I highly recommend it on that aspect of it. Have you been working on it for a while? Is this a project that you've been doing for like a number of years, or is this a project that took a year to do? How long have you been working on Lost Boy?
Lost Boy took a few months. It was during the pandemic, and my wife was like, I think being in LA was like very stressful, and she was like, "We got to get out. Let's like explore what we can." And so we packed up the family and we went to Santa Fe, New Mexico we ended up staying there almost a year. But it was when we were in Santa Fe and the kids were on Zoom school. And my wife, she represents writers and directors, and she's a manager. And her business was like still going. So she was like on Zooms and working with her clients. And I was basically in charge of like making sure the kids didn't like run away from their computers during
Yes.
Zoom. So we would be like in this house in New Mexico, and it was like me and our two kids, and I was picked up this project, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna get back into Lost Boy, and just would do it while they were at school, like we were all sitting together, sort of in a room. I mean, it was probably like 2 or 3 months of just drawing at the table with them, and then maybe another few weeks later on to sort of finish it out. But yeah, it was like over the course of maybe like 2 or 3, maybe 4 months.
Nice. And I mean, it ends up at Dark Horse. Was this I pitched it around to a number of places? Was there connections? How did it end up at Dark Horse?
I have a crazy story about this, and it all goes back to Shawn Mendes, who wrote the intro to the book. So he had like an album coming out in the pandemic, and his people contacted me and they were like, hey, we're thinking of doing like a Shawn Mendes graphic novel to go with the album. And I was like, they came to me because I always did the storyboards and for his videos that I would direct, and we'd do these animatics and kind of like an animated version of the video before we made it. And so they knew all about me and drawing comics, and so they were like, let's do this like comic. And so I spent like, I don't know, maybe a few weeks just like talking with them, going back and forth with ideas. And I did all this research about comics, and I kind of got excited about it. And then they were like, yeah, it just doesn't seem right. Or for whatever reason, they were like, no, we're not going to do this. But it kind of set me off on this, like, I need to like see this through. Like, I need to make this is the time. Like, no one's shooting anything. I'm, in this place alone, and I can just do it. And so I basically took this idea that I'd done like maybe 3 or 4 pages of a couple of years ago, and I just, opened it up, and I was like, all right, I'm going to finish it to the end. I had the outline done. I had like written the story, and I just started going, and that's what got it going. But then, okay, this is where it's a funny story. So I lost track. So I do the whole comic just like all by myself in the back. And then like I end up shooting a video for Shawn Mendes in Toronto. And so I fly up there to like do the video, and we're like prepping or hanging out, and I'm talking to his manager, Andrew, and I'm like, remember that comic book we were talking about doing like way back when? And he's like, yeah, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, I did it, and I want to show it to you. And I showed it to him, and he was like, dude, this is really cool. Like, I feel like there's something here. Like, he's like, I'm going to give it to Shawn's agent, and let's like see what happens. So they gave it to his agent at CA, who's this woman named Austin Denisuk, and she basically gave it to, started introducing me to like the different comic book publishers and all the people in that world, and different people she knew, and Dark Horse specifically. And Dark Horse was like, this is really cool, we're interested in publishing it. And so like that was the chain of events that went from to that book getting made.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Dark Horse is a great place. They've got a great number of people there. I mean, I love there's a number of great creators going on there. There's people in the upper offices that are great there. Their stories are amazing, and to me, they treat the media, they treat us pretty well as well. So that's pretty awesome that it ended up there. I'm happy that it's there in general. And then you release it. It comes out in August, and then what? Was it right around the time you released it that you were announced that you're doing another? graphic novel was like a week later or something like that, the same week or something
I
like
think
that.
they announced it like the same week it came out.
So
I don't know.
obviously Yellow is not because of the success of Lost Boy. This is just you already had this in the hopper. I'm guessing that Yellow was going to come at some point in the future.
Yeah, I mean, basically what happened is once Lost Boy got picked up and was going to get published, I had sort of made connections with like all these comic book companies, and so I was kind of running around pitching comic ideas to Dark Horse, to other people. Just sort of, I really got excited about doing another book, and Yellow was a project that I've been developing for a while, and so I brought that to Dark Horse, and they were like, "All right, let's do this too." So that had been, yeah, they just announced it, but yeah, that's going to come out in May, I guess.
You know, it's funny, but if all, I mean, obviously the publishing industry does not mean that you may, not because of you, but because of a bunch of different factors, that you might not hit deadlines. Like there may be a paper issue or a shipping issue or whatever. But if all things go well, it comes out at local comic book shops on May 15th, which is my birthday.
Oh
So
my gosh.
it's a great birthday present for me, Jay. Thank you. I
I'll
appreciate
send you
it.
a special copy just for your
Wrapped
birthday.
with a bow on it. Yeah, no.
Yeah, the
So I was
bow.
like laughing about that, and I'm like, oh, actually, whatever. It's right around my birthday, so I can say it's a birthday present. The funny thing is I'll get the PR thing like months earlier or a month
Yeah,
earlier, and I get to read it anyway. But no matter when it comes out, I'll get to read it in that time. But no, I saw that, and I was like, it's always one of those things. I mean, I don't care. I'm 37 years old. Birthdays don't really mean much anymore. Except for the fact that I'm getting older is the only thing. But no, and so when I saw that, I laughed. I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing. I'll be able to promote it around there and have that out there. But if it's anything as well illustrated and written as Lost Boy, I'm excited for it. And that's one of those things that popped up to me. Either. One of the things I love about it being Lost Boy being a young adult thing was the fact that not only is it good for them, young adults, because it's a story wise, but it's easy to read. I think that's one of the biggest things to me. I think there's so many books that I've gotten advanced copies of out there in the past, couple of years that I've like got into the first couple of pages, and I'm just like, there's just so much going on. There's like, I need to know 17 different characters and different storylines and so on and so forth, that with this being a simple number of characters and the simple number of things that are going on, I was able to just like not bust through it in a way that like I ignore things, but I was able to like almost read it once and okay, now I want to do it again and read it and look up on pick up on other things that are going on. Some of books I just can't get through, and that's the thing. And so like to me, easing to read is not saying that it's simple, but there's something to a very smooth reading book, and Lost Boy definitely fits in that category.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad. I think that's the idea. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I'm like making this stuff is like making it accessible so you can enjoy the story and not be,
Well, I don't, with the writers and director strike, I was the writers and actor strike and stuff like that. I don't like talking much about movies and things that are on TV, but I'm watching a TV show right now that has the very first episode was like they introduced like 50 different people, and I don't like, it's like it's like we're now 6 episodes in, my wife and I, and like trying to figure out, okay, that's who that is, and that's who that is, and also the fact that this is actually based on true events, and so that part also frustrates me because I'm like, I should know who that person is, but is it that person? I can't tell, and that's me, and that's one of the things I actually never got into like Game of Thrones or anything like that, is because there's just so many things going on. My mind is not sharp enough for all that stuff, especially when family members are sleeping with family members. That also screws up everything too.
That's the brand. If you're not into that, you're not into Game
Well,
of
I'm just
Thrones.
like, it's hard. It's like, okay, wait, hold on a second. Isn't that his mom? I'm so confused right now. And like, no, it is. That you just have to be okay with that. Okay, makes sense. But no,
that's what they do on that show.
but I think yeah. So Lost Boy is for those people out there who are really against floppy comics because they don't want to wait month to month or so on and so forth. They're trade waiters. That's this perfect also about something like Lost Boy. It's an original graphic novel. So all the story comes out all at once. You can read it all at once and get the whole thing. It's available at local comic book shops and bookstores, as well as you can get it probably digitally on the internet, I would believe, too, out there if you're a digital person. We just talked about digital drawing. There's also digital readers. So, but picking up a physical copy, we recommend buying it at an LCS, your local comic book store or bookstore. However, buy it anywhere. That's my big thing. You may not like big box stores, but if they have it, get it, because that also shows Dark Horse and all these other companies that sell it that's worth stocking it. And so, and then maybe Jay will get more than just Yellow, and there'll be more books coming on in the future. But we want to finish up here pretty quickly here soon. But what is Yellow about, so people can get ready for that one too?
Okay, so Yellow is it's a story of a soldier who flees the battlefield in a sort of semi-futuristic civil war, and he's wounded, but he doesn't want to be in this war, and he doesn't want to be anywhere near it, so he runs away. And that's his journey is the story.
That's awesome.
Like, basically, it's kind of explores like what this country would be like in the middle of like a horrific civil war, like kind of like what's going on in Ukraine right now, but imagine that in America, in a fictionalized version of America.
That's awesome. And so, are you done with that already, or are you still illustrating it, or is it like you just wait? Because bookmark is also different. If anybody doesn't know, comic books, it's like can be faster. Bookmark is usually about a year before you get something coming out.
I mean, this book is, I'd say it's, I mean, there's a little bit of work to be done yet, but it's basically done. I mean, there's there's probably a little bit more artwork done that needs to be done, and then but it's basically done.
That's awesome. That's exciting, and it's cool to do that. Are you doing comics now? Is this your thing, or are you going to go back?
No, I'm doing another project with Dark Horse additionally.
Oh, cool.
But I don't know if I can disclose, but I'm
Which
not.
Is fine, yeah.
It's a little under wraps, but we just started the project, but I'm just illustrating it and working with some other creative teams. So it's kind of fun to be on that side of it.
That's really cool. I mean, if Shawn calls again, are you gonna do another music video? How does this work? Are you gonna go back into music videos? Are you still gonna storyboard?
I mean, the hard thing is like the time. Like the comics take so much time. I'm usually like bothering my agent about like getting me a video, but I feel like I'm trying to wait till this comic stuff is like, I don't know. I love it though. It's really it's enjoyable. It's great to like see the book come out. It's a different world. It's something new.
It's awesome. I love it too. I love the intermedia. Like I talked to Patton a couple of weeks ago, Patton Oswalt, and being an actor, comedian, all that stuff, and also drawing and illustrating comics. It's really cool because to me, any way we can get people to read and take in comics is a great thing. So if someone was a Patton Oswalt fans of him in King of Queens or Ratatouille or whatever, and they're like, oh, he wrote a comic book, awesome, I'm gonna buy that, and then fall in love with comics. Same way if someone's like, seen a movie that you storyboarded or so on and so forth, finds the connections and knows that you drew illustrated and wrote a comic, that they might be into it. So I love this cross thing. And there in a couple of weeks I'm talking to David Dismalchin, the actor. He wrote comics, and so for Dark Horse, and so that's pretty cool in that sense too. So like those are kind of cool things. I love that cross promotion almost about these things. Like I might be able to get someone to read this book who's not a comic book person if I explain to them that you directed such and such music video or storyboarded such and such movie, and they're like, oh, I have a frame of reference for, so let me try this out in that sense too. So that's how I got people to listen to my podcast with Patton Oswalt. They're like, who is this guy? And I'm like, then I say, these certain things. Oh, that guy. I'm like, yes. When you see his picture, you'll understand who this person is.
Yeah, I listened to that one. Minor Threats.
Minor Threats and the alternates just came out last week. And Tim Seeley, who's an unbelievable comic book person, as well as Jordan Bloom, who great director and writer and all that stuff as well in his own right. But yeah, I highly recommend it. And I'll give a little spoiler, not of the book, but in the world of the fact that this is a strong contender for comic book of the year, our top 10 comic books of the year here at Capes and Tights. So I'm really happy for it. So people should buy it and read it before we get to the end of the year and it ends up on the list. How about that?
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I really like it a lot. So I'm really happy you made it, and I'm excited for Yellow. You can find Jay, you're on Instagram, so Twitter, all that stuff too. So you can look at Jay Martin. I think it's just Jay Martian.
It's
Is that
at
right?
One is my
Okay.
Instagram.
Okay. And then so find them on social media out there. Buy Lost Boy, and when the pre-orders are available, they might be available soon to Yellow. Pre-order Yellow as well, and get that one out there as well. And then keep an eye out for more stuff coming from Jay. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to us and talk comics and all that stuff. Thank you so much, Jay.
Cool, man. Thank you so much for having me, man. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Enjoy the rest of your day.